Again, thanks for coming. Well, board directors, like any team, sometimes overperforms, sometimes underperforms. And when you get underperformance, you get issues of loss of value, stakeholder issues, and clearly not a sort of happy camp place to be at. Richard mentioned the new guidelines put forward by the FRC early this month. And I'm just taking a couple of vignettes from there, really. The board sought to provide entrepreneurial leadership against a background of uncertainty. I guess stop there for a moment. Uncertainty is a property of nature, and it's a property of organizational life. And that has never changed, and quite frankly, that will never change. It's about making sure that, as a board, we provide the right leadership, we make the right calls, and mistakes will be made, but hopefully guide the company forward. As I'm sure you're aware, the Companies Act makes the point very clearly, Section 172 for the ANORACs, that directors are duty-bound to promote the success of the company. And when the Blair government was asked, well, what do you mean about that? After humming and harming, they said, well, increasing long-term value, which is pretty much value creation and shareholder value. The Corporate Governance Code, as Richard suggests, applies to listed companies on main market only, premium listing, not AIM, or not yet anyway. But it's just good practice. We've done work in sort of public sector and even charities who reckon that clearly it's something which is well worth doing for a variety of different reasons and a variety of different levels. And as of June of last year, FTSE 350, this review has to be done externally by using independent facilitators. We do, all the consultants, and I'll talk about them very briefly, we do a fair bit of facilitation with companies and organizations. And certainly when I sort of chair or facilitate your typical away day, if sort of lunchtime or beforehand there's been no tension or no argument or nothing like that, you just know there's a problem because the market is not good. And hence my point here. A board does not need to be a comfortable place. And sometimes you need the tension, sometimes you need the sort of friction, because it does provide some useful checks and balances in organizations. Often that doesn't happen. As I'm sure you know, but it's well worth mentioning, directors have collective responsibility. At a board level, it's one person, one vote. The Companies Act makes no distinction between executive or non-executive directors. It's pretty much every person for himself or herself in that kind of situation. It's just kind of important that good practice is adhered to in some form or shape. We probably could spend the next hour in terms of looking at issues which affect boards and board performance and ultimately company performance. But just a couple just to give you a flavour of some of the issues certainly we have encountered in practice. Wrong balance, be it not enough non-executive directors, many perhaps too much specialism bias in our business, maybe too many people who understand the industry and perhaps not enough from outside the industry, not enough diversity, be it gender, be it age, and the list pretty much kind of goes on. No true independence. The Higgs report, which was renamed as of 3 weeks ago, in terms of the new guidelines, suggests that non-exec directors should be there for no more than 9 years. Yeah? There's a strong body of argument to suggest 9 years you've long gone native. Okay, take 2 or 3 years to familiarize to get better. 9 years on, perhaps you've gotten a bit too close to the business and practice. Perhaps it's time to kind of move on. And it's about watching constantly the mix and the composition of the board and board members and the contribution which they actually make. The Combined Code last year went to great pains to actually highlight the word groupthink as a malaise which boards and organizations should not subject themselves to. Now, groupthink came out of Vietnam, where the American generals and sort of senior politicians had convinced themselves that actually we are winning this war against overwhelming evidence that clearly we weren't. And it's about being intolerant of dissenters. It's about not accepting criticism. It's about erecting bodyguards to protect key decision makers. And it's about creating this sort of illusion of unanimity that all is well in the business and perhaps it's not sort of groupthink again. Autocratic chief executive, well, how long have we got? In our work, we always get really careful when you hear people say things like my vision, my strategy. And I think the singular expression is quite concerning, as opposed to our strategy and our vision. So why us? Who the hell are we? Well, no doubt you've looked at our website, yes? And sort of seen the list of consultants, and we're adding one or two more, just in the final stage of stuff. I think if you look at our consultants, there's history, banking, finance, accountancy, sales, marketing, strategy, governance, and 2 consulting psychologists. So there's a huge breadth of experience in the team. What you also need to know is all of us have had business experience of sorts before getting into consultancy. So we're not fresh out of a business school and MBA into business, although there's nothing wrong with that, I would suggest. But we feel we have a really good mix of both business, the hard skills, and sort of been there, done that school of knocks, and the qualifications and the experience which actually come with it. We have 2 toolkits, one a governance tool and one a strategies tool, which our consultants don't have to use, which perhaps people should use because we think they're both good and very portable. But our approach is very flexible. The discussion we had at lunchtime today is we certainly will go in and we'll have a diagnosis. We'll pick the right consultant to do the piece of work, do a thorough and proper diagnosis, and then suggest a piece of work which sort of comes afterwards. Now, the piece of work can be quite small, can be a half-a-day sort of address, it can be something more comprehensive. It pretty much depends on the needs of the client. I can assure you all our consultants have been extremely carefully vetted. Everyone has signed up to a code of conduct and to a code of values, which clearly we expect them to behave, and they're good people on their way. And I think what we'd like to think, what makes us perhaps a bit different is we're not affiliated to any other firm, in that we are well and truly independent. We have a huge amount of experience, and really no job too small, no job too big, pretty much.
I might just add, Gary, if I may.
Please do.
You know, it was touched on there, sort of public companies, perhaps larger organisations, but you know, recognised certainly in the Midlands, which is our sort of heartland, although we work all over the country. There's a lot of private companies, a lot of partnerships. They actually have these same sort of issues, and it's more about what do you do with the people that are there in the partnership board or the board of directors. How do you transition from the entrepreneur, the guy that sets it up, or the second generation? How do you build a management team? How do you communicate with these people? And how do you get the balance right? And if the end game is to extract value from the business, then these things take a little bit of planning. A lot of private companies, in my own experience, are overly dominated by not so much the individual, but the imprint of the individual is left on the organisation. This is done this way, therefore that's the right thing to do. And in good measure too, an underinvestment in good people around. So for private companies and partnerships in particular, I think there's a whole raft of issues about the people, about retirement, about succession. And it just don't fit itself into any great template. So, as Jean says, getting the board to come away for half a day and have a chit-chat and find out what's going on, to have something structured, to facilitate a discussion, to pick off individual directors who the owner perhaps thinks are not performing, to help as an independent sounding board. We do all that sort of stuff outside any templates, any sort of structures. The structures lend themselves more to larger companies and where there's a bit of compliance. But we've got some independently minded, independent people who have a lot of experience and can just help. Sometimes you just need to pick up a director and help them. You might need some assessment work, some development work.